Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Longtime advocates for allowing global meat packers to capture the live cattle supply chain away from America's cattle producers are now fighting to prevent any reforms to restore competition to our cattle market. And it's now clear to almost everyone that our chronically dysfunctional cattle market is now an acutely dysfunctional market. And this is evidenced by all the recent calls for investigations from all levels of government, including from the President of the United States. Nevertheless, there are economists hard at work to prevent any meaningful reforms from Congress. Now, in May, Senators Grassley and Tester introduced Senate Bill 3693 to require the largest meat packers to purchase at least 50% of their cattle from the cash market, which would increase competition in the industry's most important price discovery market. Just 4 days after Senate Bill 3693 was introduced, Colorado State University economist Stephen Kuntz, who works closely with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, issued a white paper claiming that the Grassley-Tester bill would cost the U.S. cattle industry $2.5 billion annually. He said it would reduce the size of the cattle industry, and he said most of this impact would be borne by cow-calf producers. Now, using rather technical economic jargon, this type of prediction is known as the sky is falling argument. But you decide. The price of a fed steer today, while the volume in the cash market remains ultra thin, is about the same price it was 10 years ago. Yet beef prices today are higher than they were when fed cattle brought about $750 more per head than they're bringing today. So this begs the question, how can increasing competition in the industry's most important price discovery market cause greater harm to cattle producers than the harm they are already experiencing? And another basic question, how can an industry that has been shrinking for the past 25 years in terms of its number of participants, number of cattle, number of feedlots, and number of packers be expected to shrink even worse if competition is increased in the industry's most important price discovery market? Now, looking at the numbers, the largest four packers that would be subject to Senate Bill 3693 control about 85% of the nation's fed steer and heifer slaughter, meaning they control about 22.5 million head. So based on Stephen Kuntz's dire prediction of a $2.5 billion loss, that would equate to a loss of about $110 for every head of cattle purchased by the largest packers each year. And if we were to apply this theory to today's cattle prices, that would mean the price of a fed steer would be lowered to about $95 a hundredweight, which happens to be where they were just a few months ago in July 2020. Now, given that the cash market only began shrinking below the 50% level in 2005, and given that the spread between cattle prices and beef prices was about $2 a pound back then, but today it's twice that, about $4 a pound, how in the world can increasing competition in the cattle industry's most important price discovery market create more market dysfunction than what is occurring today? And the answer is it can't. You see, the answer that more competition cannot cause more marketplace dysfunction reveals the true motivation driving economists like Stephen Kuntz to make such dire the sky is falling type arguments. And that motivation is the very same motivation that has prevented Congress from taking any action to preserve and protect competition in the U.S. cattle industry for decades. It's because competition is no longer the goal. The goal, and the goal that's been driving our industry for decades, is efficiency. But it's a misguided goal for our cattle industry, and here's why. A fully integrated, monopolistic cattle and beef supply chain is more efficient than a competitive one. It has fewer participants, thus fewer inputs and fewer moving parts. And it has a huge economy of scale with which to spread its cost. And of course, it could set beef prices wherever it wanted to maximize profits. That's efficiency. But that type of structure, which is precisely where America's cattle industry is headed if we don't put an immediate stop to its current direction, will not support rural communities in Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Colorado, or anywhere else. And as was proven during the COVID-19 pandemic, it will not meet our nation's food security interests. So it boils down to this. Will the U.S. cattle industry embrace competition as its ultimate goal and work together to persuade Congress to do what is necessary to restore the cattle industry's lost competition? Or will America's cattle industry bow at the altar of economic efficiency and let the multinational meat packers and their allies continue their efforts to control the cattle and beef industries from birth to plate? It's your industry. You decide. But if you decide to embrace competition, you need to pick up the phone and call your members of Congress right now and keep calling them. Tell them to pass Senate Bill 3693 so we can once again have a competitive market to market U.S. cattle into. With that, thank you and have a productive week.